All right, so good evening. So this is our atypical .NET user group in an atypical location. Tonight is the Uno Platform. They're our gold sponsor this month. I'm sorry, a few words from our gold sponsor. And a contributing sponsor we have is JetBrains. Our room is thanks to the folks at New Signature. I always want to call them Nebbia. They're still Nebbia in my head. So thank them for the use of the room. Couldn't get the library tonight. This is a nice facility they have. And we have a stormtrooper to keep us in mind.
Yes, that came with them. When they leased the place, that came with it.
Hey, that's fun. It's a bonus, man. You got a stormtrooper. So the big announcement, if you haven't seen it, is March 28th, 2020 will be our Orlando Code Camp and Tech Conference. We've already got, I think, 22 or 23 speakers already signed up, and we only opened it up 3 days ago. So we've already got a good bit of speakers. So if you want to, you can go to, I'm sure the link is on the Orlando Code Camp site. There'll be a link off of that to go to Sessionize, where you can put in your session if you're so inclined to speak. Let's see here. Our one-tug board is Santosh. He is on travel this week. So I am Todd. Andy and I are do the communications for the group. Tanner, who's the guard at the door, he is our treasurer. He'll be up shortly. Brian Mishler he's our marketing and vice president, and Brian is in the Caribbean on a cruise ship, drinking Mai Tais and having a really good time. And we're not. We're having a good time. We're just not drinking Mai Tais. If you need to reach us, the best way to reach us is probably on Meetup and also at board@onetug.org. If you need to reach us directly that way, and also Twitter. I mean, Santosh is a Twitter hound. He's always on Twitter. So, that is a good way to get us to us too, because we all have access to the Twitter account. So I'm always going, hey, somebody's following me. Oh no, they're not. They're following the group. We don't have any more nerd dinners, or there's no nerd dinner this month, and our meetups are going to be TBD right now. We got this meetup, and then of course normal meetup time is around Thanksgiving, so we probably won't have a meetup, and then we'll have to see what we're doing in December. See if we
but
can
usually we don't have a second meeting in November and December anyways, because that's usually when we do our nerd dinner, and that's the end of the month.
Right. So we will probably have a nerd dinner next month. Just about. Do you guys have nerd dinners? Same thing. Just geeks eating food, drinking beer, and talking stuff. Always drinking beer though. It's always good. But anyway, just keep an eye out on the meetup site for upcoming meetings. They'll be published whenever if we can find a speaker. It's always a rough time of the year. This is always between now and the end of the year. Every weekend, my wife says about the Christmas party. You better schedule it now because the days are running out. Other groups in the area: Orlando Backend, IoT, and the Azure Orlando. I thought that group was having a hiatus, but I think somebody actually picked it up and it's going to continue to be active. If you want to support us, you can go to the contribute site off of Meetup. And I'll open the floor. Are there any community announcements of any kind? Tonight's agenda, and then we're going to hear from the folks from the Uno Platform. I don't think we're going to do prizes and closing because
yeah, well, we don't have I don't think we have anything
I don't think we have anything to give away. Usually Santosh does that, but we will be having after meeting refreshments. I don't know where we've decided. Probably Market on Magnolia.
Yeah,
it's a couple of blocks for y'all that aren't local. It's just a couple of,
we usually go as a crowd. Anyways.
Yeah, from the front of the place here, it's just down the block. It's not and it's kind of like what do they call it? They were talking about it the other day. It's like there's a bar. It's a bar, and inside the bar are several businesses which sell food. I forget what they call it. There's a name they were calling it. They have one out in Winter Garden. It's actually, what's that? No, I forget. There's a term that they call it. It's like a dinner hall kind of thing, but in each one of the restaurants is a different business. So the bar serves all the beer, and there's pizza, there's subs. It's pretty cool. So we'll go up there after there for refreshments. And I'm just going to let you get started.
Yes.
So let me unplug here.
Just take that up. Oop. Thank you. Should be up there. Okay, thank you everyone. So for coming tonight, this is going to be about the open source Uno platform. My name is Jérôme Laban. I'm the CTO of the Uno Platform, and I'm going to be showing you what Uno is about if you haven't heard about it, and even if you did hear about it, I'm going to be giving you some small details, even if, especially because of the announcement that have been made at the Ignite conference regarding Windows and WinUI 3. So what is the Uno platform? The Uno platform is about sharing C# and XAML on iOS, Android, and WebAssembly. It's all about reusing skills, because you may know about, in this room, how many people are doing XAML and C#? C#, no XAML, okay. And C#? Okay, a bit more, so that's good. That's about, it's really about all that. And it's an open source project. We've been open source since May 2018 at the Build conference. We've been developing that for a long while, about 6 years. And the reason for that was that, Inventive, that is behind the Uno platform, we were using it. We were developing a lot of Windows Phone and Windows and Silverlight and WPF applications at the time. And for a while, so Microsoft was very into that kind of development, especially for the phone. And then after a while, they kind of phased out the Windows Phone, and we had a lot of developers that were on XAML and C# at Inventive. And we said, well, if people want to do iOS and Android, if we have C# and .NET, C# and XAML developers, well, they may not be reusing those skills. So we tried to sort a few things into trying to run that C# and XAML on iOS and Android, and it started to pick up. And we continued moving forward, and 200 applications later, we have now a lot of live applications on the stores, on both stores, on iOS and Android, that are used by our clients and by customers on I wouldn't say the planet, but at least in North America. So that's quite a few of those. Came 2017 at the time, and then WebAssembly came in, and that's where it got interesting. And then we decided to push that out to the public, because it was a gem for us, and we couldn't keep that out to ourselves. So it was all about pushing that out, and it's been very interesting to see all that. So I'll be diving into WebAssembly and other parts of that a bit later on. So what Uno Platform is, it's about implementing the APIs of UWP, and specifically WinRT. So when we're talking UWP, Microsoft is conflating the term to many things at the same time. So we're talking about the API. We're not talking about the container system that they put in place in Windows. It's about implementing the stack panels and all the grids of WPF and WinUI, and making that run on iOS, Android, and the web. It also gives us the ability to reuse all the, to provide common APIs for non-UI features of the platform, like geolocation, file access, sensors. We have a contributor that just contributed something to control on cross-platform the lamp of the camera, so you can just turn that on and off. So that's the kind of thing that giving the open source was. We wouldn't have developed it because we didn't need it, but obviously someone did, so there it is, available now. And because we're implementing all the WinUI and WinRT APIs, that means that any kind of code that uses those APIs that can be compiled on Windows can also be compiled for iOS, Android, and the web. So there's no need to change anything. And that means that Windows Community Toolkit, Prism, Reactive UI, and all those frameworks that you may know about or probably already use, they're available as ports over to Uno. So that's the basic idea behind what Uno provides. So in terms of the segmentation of all that's what it looks like. So on Windows, we're never present because there's UWP there, and Microsoft does all that really well for Windows. There's no need for Uno to be there. On the web, we're relying on HTML and CSS for the rendering, and we're using Mono at the bottom. On iOS, we're using Xamarin Classic, so there's no Xamarin Forms that sits there. Oh, I forgot about that one. If you're using, did any of you hear about Blazor? A little bit? Okay, so we're not using Blazor at all. So we're clear that on this front. Blazor is basically something that uses Mono for WebAssembly at this point, and we're basically doing the same, but Blazor and Uno are very different. So Blazor is using rendering for the web, and Uno is doing XAML and C# on the other side. But I'll dive into that one more specifically later on. For iOS, we're relying on Xamarin Classic. There's no Xamarin Forms at this point. I'll talk about Xamarin Forms on the other side for WebAssembly a bit later on. And for iOS, for Android, same thing, relying on Xamarin Classic, no Xamarin Forms at all, and there's Mono at the bottom. So it's a familiar stack, and the point is that an Uno application on iOS and Android is a Xamarin application. So that means that anything that Xamarin provides already, like for instance in the latest incarnations of Visual Studio, there's notion of app bundles for Android. So they're pushing that to be able to slice the packages that are published to devices so that they're smaller. Something that Apple's been doing for years, but now Android's providing that, and that means that if you're doing some Uno application, if Xamarin provides it, you can use it. That's the basic idea. So from what Xamarin is concerned, Uno is just a library in a sense. You're not modifying any kind of the packaging behavior that comes along with Xamarin. Any question on the structure? Don't hesitate to interrupt me if there's something that is not clear. So I was talking about the way to render content from an application. So let's say I have a text block in my XAML and in the shared code. Then how does that translate to something that is displayed for the user? Then if I have a text block in my XAML, it becomes a UI label on iOS, it becomes a text view on Android, and become an HTML paragraph on WebAssembly. Same thing for for platform APIs, so non-UI APIs. So if you want to write to setting storage, if you want to store maybe an email that the user has written in his login page, well, there's an abstraction for that uses what UWP provides, and you're going to see that we can use NS user defaults, and it's hidden. You don't need to do anything to be using that, but if you use those APIs, then it's going to go to NS user default, share preferences, and index DB for each platform. So that's how at high level we're rendering things onto the devices from the XAML. So I'm going to be showing you what it means to develop an application from using the Uno platform. So we're talking about when you start developing an application, basically you're going to go to Visual Studio, the extension store, and you're going to be finding, when you search into the online store, you're going to be finding the Uno platform's solution templates, which is going to be giving you find new project experience. So when you search for Uno, we provide two templates. The first one is,
So it's Visual Studio 2019?
2019 or 17. It doesn't change much. We're supporting both. Is there a specific question about that one, or is it just for the version?
I was just wondering about the version.
Oh, okay. So version, we're supporting both of those. That works. So we have two templates. The first one is for cross-platform library. So if you want to reuse some XAML and C# across projects, that's the way to do. And there's also a way to make a cross-platform project. So what that one looks like is basically something that looks like this. So we're talking about a set of, when you create the application, a set of 5 projects. You're going to see an Android application, iOS, a UWP and WebAssembly, and a shared project that contains all the XAML and C# and assets and resources as well. So say you localize your application, that goes that way. So the resources are shared between the whole all the other heads. So each application is called a head, and the reason for that is because there's nothing much in it.